Welcome back, all you lovely listeners out there on the tubes of you. We're elated to see you here yet again for another stirring installment of Disinformed After Dark. I'm Shane.
I'm Michael.
I'm Courtney.
And I misspoke. This is actually going to be a scary installment of Disinformed After Dark because co-host Courtney here just revealed some very shocking news to the constant readers on this call, and I'm very upset. But before we get into that, allow me to tell you that we are three-quarters of the ever-popular hosts of the Disinformed podcast, which flees your preferred provider app every single marvelous Monday morning. We like to talk about random esoteric nonsense and lie about it. It's exquisite. But what we often wind up doing is we come on here, the tubes of you, to do a little decompression after our episodes and talk about random nonsense, not limited to or notwithstanding our love of one Stephen King. And if you don't believe us, I assure you, there's probably going to be Stephen King content in about 80% of our material on this channel in particular, including a Stephen King book club where we discussed his book Revival a few months ago. So you should go check those things out. But Courtney is admittedly a neophyte to the Stephen King game insofar as, am I correct in saying you only read and saw your first Stephen King material because we were prepping for Fan Fusion this year?
Yeah, I probably never would have otherwise.
Okay. So, as is often the case with individuals who were raised in a loving household, we have debauched them slowly and insidiously, and now we're out in the open making poor decisions. So, Courtney, what did you wind up doing last night?
Oh, so we watched it chapter 1 and chapter 2 back-to-back movie marathon style last night.
Oh,
So
exquisite.
Nice.
So
nice.
I hit record on this because we wanted to go in unfettered and completely unaware. So how did you feel about them?
I thought they were fine. So I have to be transparent.
Yeah, don't gild the lily.
So I may or may not have been under the influence of a medication at the time.
Noted.
So I did fall asleep for an hour during the second one, but I woke up to see the last hour of it. So that was fine. I knew what was going on.
You know, of all the times you picked to start taking psilocybin.
Yeah, I thought it would really enlighten me. I thought I could really connect with Pennywise if I got on his level.
And the connectivity of all things, in fact.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you feel about cows?
Oh my God.
I'm sorry, please. If you haven't already heard an episode a couple of weeks back where we talk about this, go enjoy.
It was a good one. I really liked that one.
Bless you.
I think for me, my problem with anything Stephen King movies now or film or shows or any of the other things outside of his books is it makes me wonder what actually happened, because I think they allude to certain things. They allude to Bevy's dad being an absolute nightmare human, but I can only imagine that the book takes that further and actually gives us more detail. I think, was it Richie, the one whose mom has Munchausen's by proxy? Which one of their?
That's Eddie.
Yes.
Eddie. Mm-hmm. But like, I imagine that all of that gets more of a backstory.
Yes.
And so for me, I think the movies were entertaining, but it makes me want to read the book and be like, what's the actual situation here? So.
Yeah, because there's a couple of major differences between the movies and the books. Shane agrees.
In particular, the endings, which they actually poke fun at in Chapter 2, having Stephen King himself claim that he doesn't like one of his characters' endings to his books is a kind of running theme. So, there is a dramatic departure from a lot of King's particular scripted material. Most of the adaptations are a little rough to get through. Apropos, I just finished Dreamcatcher yesterday, which I hated the movie. I thought it was one of the worst things ever committed as a crime in cinema history. And as I've mentioned before, Morgan Freeman gives like the Tommy Lee Jones performance from Batman Forever. Like it's so unlike him as an actor. He's just way over the top, and it's just ridiculous. We're also not going to talk about Donnie Wahlberg in that movie. We're just going to leave this whole thing alone. But strangely enough, on this topic, the characters all grew up in Derry, and they are individuals who grew up in Derry in the 70s and then went back and encountered the things that occurred in the 80s a little bit. They're not there when the standpipe topples and all that other thing. Spoilers for those who haven't read the It book. But it gives you a weird parallel. It's kind of like I called it the strange progeny of, or a sequel of the Tommyknockers and It. So it has kind of a thoroughfare from those two stories. But It is one of my absolute favorite books. I devoured it the first few times that I read it, including when I was a young child, in spite of the fact that I didn't really understand what the heck was going on and was terrified through most of it.
Oh, man. Reading the end as a child just sounds...
I didn't know. I honestly, I was a very sheltered young man. We didn't really have. They didn't have the talk in my household, so I didn't know what was happening. And there's a lot of bird talk as well, you know. So it's like you're not really getting the entirety of what's transpiring there as a kid. So thankfully, I escaped reasonably unscathed in a psychological sense. I was later ruined by the internet, so don't think that I made it out alive. But I think you might actually really enjoy it, having encountered several other King works. And if you've lived through reading The Outsider in particular, I think you'll survive anything else that he throws at you as far as gore. So, yeah, I heartily recommend, but that's exciting. And I really, to put the bow on that, Dreamcatcher as a book was fantastic. I actually, in spite of how bizarre it is, I gave Courtney the full rundown when we were talking the other day.
The Michael Fever Dream book.
Yeah, it's, oh, my friend, it's pretty rough.
Don't tease me.
It's got everything you love.
So, apropos of the mushroom talk from the episode as well, so this is like an alien intelligence which is contained in weird sort of like mold spores, which start to spread as flora throughout the planet, and it's sort of this weird pervasive virus that starts to spread everywhere. And it starts to manifest in a personified form to these four individuals that find it out in the woods. And so it's Mr. Gray for the rest of it because it takes over control of one of the other person's bodies. But how this thing infests human beings is a very Ridley Scott xenomorph-esque kind of way. And that if you go encounter the Byram, or the Burnham, I'm forgetting, I think it's Byram, it will invade you and start to feed on you. And then it coalesces into a strange, what they call, and this is our swear for the episode, a shit weasel. So it turns into this strange eel-esque creature that once it is finished feeding on you, explodes out of your posterior. Now, I know, I joke that, you know, some of the nose candy has sort of crystallized and occasionally breaks off and makes it back into his system because he's very far afield. As weird as this sounds, I really loved the book. I cared about the characters. I was interested in what would happen to them. And in spite of how hyperbolic a lot of the situation was, I wound up really invested in where the story wound up. And there's a lot of insensitivity. There's an individual there who has a mental and physical handicap that is more or less mocked by a lot of other characters, but the four boys sort of coalesce around him and befriend him, and they're all very close, and he's sort of the dream catcher that binds them all together through the story. So the character's really fun, but it is, if you're just reading it from an outsider perspective and reading a synopsis, it sounds incredibly insensitive. So, you know, as always, it's a mixed bag, but I really enjoyed it, thought it was an interesting book, and I did not anticipate it was going to be one. I expected to hate it, so I was glad that I escaped with something that I enjoyed. But as per usual, we're just diving in as devotees of Dr. King here. And I got to stop doing that. Someone's going to get angry at me at some point. It's not that one.
Not the Reverend Dr.
Speaking
King.
of being insensitive, yes, indeed. And we love both of those. The other Dr. King as well. So I think that is sufficient. But so, Courtney, thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs in the middle on the franchise filmically.
I think I liked the first one more. I think the ending of the second one got to the point where it was just kind of silly. Like, it wasn't really scary anymore. It was just, oh, look, he's just chasing us around for 20 minutes. Oh, no, what are we going to do? And, like, I understand maybe in the theaters that might have had more impact. But for me, it was more like, get to the next thing. Like, we can see him running around chasing you. Like, cool, we get it.
We get it. You're trying to kill us. Come on already.
I will say I really appreciate both of the filmic adaptations for how they treat the children's phase of everyone encountering Pennywise. When they start getting into the adult phase, they go really, in both iterations, they go really far afield, and they try to veer away from a lot of the things that happen in the book. And unfortunately, while it is dated and there are some problematic instances with it, I think the more you get preachy with some of these things, the less impactful it feels. And the ending is weird. So when you get to the book, if and when you decide to read it, the ending is a major hurdle to clear. But it will be your first step on a lovely primrose path into the Dark Tower. So there's something to be said for that. But yes, it might take a little discussion because it gets bizarrely metaphysical in a very weird, wild way. And
It's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things I told Jonah is, like, I feel like it doesn't have enough rules around it to make it a good movie monster.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that it was constantly changing shape, it was moving, it was causing this scary thing to happen and that, like, it was almost like it was too much. So I don't know. I'd be interested in see how the book goes, but I'm too busy reading Mr. Mercedes right now. So we'll have to put that on the list.
We have a lot of homework assignments that I give you for this show. I'm very sorry about that. Eventually, someday you can just read what you want.
Nah. Forget that.
Or you can just endure the ritual of chud, depending upon whatever, situation you encounter. I'm not sure I prefer any of them, if I'm being honest. So, long story short, Too Bloody Late. It is a book worth exploring, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it once we roll around to that. But anything further that you want to throw in here, Michael?
No, you guys covered everything I wanted to talk about.
Go figure. I can't stop talking. All right. So, unless I hit stop. But in any event, we thank you all for being here for another entertaining edition of Disinformed After Dark. It's delightful. If you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have, Michael's got some instructions for you.
Smash that like button, ring that bell, hit the comment button, because just hit the comment button.
Hit it. Don't do anything else. Comment. Leave it alone.
Oh my goodness. I almost said something really bad. Smack it.
Smack it.
Smack that like button like it owes you money. Engage. Yeah,
do that. All right. So yes, like, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear from you. There's a link tree down in the description box below. You can find all our relevant socials there. We are back here on the Tubes of You every wonderful Wednesday with installments of this Disinformed After Dark, which airs at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. And of course, there are shorts just constantly flipping in the breeze.
Jump in my shorts.
Get in Michael's shorts. Yes.
Yeah.
Be sure you like once you get in there, or you might not make it out alive. And of course, all of the other relevant nonsense that we do, TikTok, Instagram, etc. You can find plenty of material to keep you entertained, as well as new episodes of our podcast, which flee every marvelous Monday morning. So go check that out and subscribe there as well. But I think that is going to officially and reasonably call it quits for us for this installment. And so, yet again, for Disinformed After Dark this week, I am the Black Blur.
I am a disappointment.
I am a poor.
And zippity zoop, we're out of here.
What, am I not scary enough for you, Richie?